Hello and welcome to the stream. Today is a raid along. The mission is Last Wish. Our goal is to play our own game and give you some developer commentary for how we brought this challenging pinnacle activity to life. I'm Deej, I'll be your host. More importantly, let's meet some of the developers, members of the development team, the raid team, who will represent the discipline that they share with many of their teammates, and talk to you a little bit about what they do at Bungie, starting with...
Hey, I'm John Toe. I'm a writer at Bungie. I wrote the Last Wish raid. I worked on all the dialogue and the game strings that we're about to see, as well as the raid gear lore tabs. I also wrote the Drifter, who's going to be our announcer today for the raid run.
Also near and dear to my heart, you brought the Lord Shax to life.
I did write Shax. Thank you.
This is amazing.
He is.
I can't believe what I'm seeing.
All the greatest hits.
All the greatest hits. And Joe.
Hey, I'm Joe Blackburn. I'm a design lead at Bungie. I led the team that created Last Wish. And last time I was on stream, my wife said my hands looked weird. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm Catherine Walker. I was the producer who closed the Last Wish raid.
Andrew Hops. I was the art lead on Last Wish and worked with all the art stakeholders on the destination and player journey. I'm going to dip out after Morgeth and let our VFX lead come in and talk about what he does too.
All right. With that, let's take a look at the fire team that we have assembled that will actually be playing the raid today. And there they are in all of their glory. We take you now live to the Dreaming City. We have assembled a fire team of raiding experts at Bungie. These are among our best players in studio. They're a fire team that's well acquainted with each other. Leading the fire team will be Stephen Glauser. Stephen, please introduce yourself as well as your teammates that will be taking on Riven today.
Hey, I'm Steven. I work on infrastructure operations at Bungie, but we've got a big team here. We've got Mason, who does Vidocs, a lot of filming in gameplay. Chase Lawhead does test lead for PC and the Korea launch, did a lot of work with that. Nate Lubetsky is a sandbox tester, worked with Thunderlord really closely. Chase Christian is an IT engineer, making sure everything stays stable. And Ralph D'Souza runs dev for automation tools. He does a lot of that stuff, especially with graphics.
Wonderful. Well, best of luck to you. We will check in with you again later on during the raid. For the time being, you are on the ground in the destination. You're good to go. So when you're ready, commence the attack. Raid team, this is your show. This is your opportunity to talk about what you worked on and to give our players who are watching a sense of what went into all of this.
So we're heading to the wishing wall right now, right? Or the wall of wishes, sorry.
The Wall of Wishes
Yep.
is where we're headed.
So Joe, we're going to troubleshoot what could be a technical difficulty over here, but what could we say all up as just sort of a summary of what did we want to accomplish with the Last Wish raid? Like, what was the first idea that we created?
Sure. So all of our raids start with an experience statement that we want to sort of go over the entire experience of the raid. So, right, for Leviathan, this is like gluttony, everything's gold. You're sort of doing this sort of like epic challenge for this, larger-than-life character. For Last Wish, we actually started with Beanstalk. And so what we sort of see Last Wish as sort of an ascension, right? You're climbing through this sort of giant city to steal the heart of a huge monster and escape with it.
And when he talks about the Beanstalk, when he talks about like the giant city and stealing the heart of a monster, when you and your peers on the narrative team tackle a raid, how hard is it to tell a story in a very complicated 6-player activity? I mean, this is the pinnacle activity. It's the hardest thing that we deliver.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all that puzzling and riddle solving and loot earning, you have to tell a story, which seems like an interesting and unique challenge.
As with everything on working on raids, even the narrative is a huge collaboration, and it's writing for a raid is more like paying attention to and hearing everything that design and art want to put into the player experience, and then being able to wrap that in a context that is fictionally sound and will fit in with the rest of our universe that has already been established. So actually, so where we're going right now, the Wall of Wishes is actually a pretty good example because it came out of a design intent to be able to give players access to ways to manipulate certain elements of the raid. We thought it'd be cool to fictionalize that, and we knew at that point that our boss was going to be Riven, the last living Ahamkara.
Yeah.
And that means a lot of things to the lore, and so we figured it'd be cool to be able to give players the opportunity to actually make wishes to an Ahamkara, kind of like Guardians do in the lore stories, through this interface that ended up being the Wall of Wishes. So what we're doing right now is we are attempting to get to the wall to wish to Riven for love and support, and because Riven is a good Ahamkara, she's not going to give us what we've asked for, and instead she's going to beam the Drifter directly into our brains, and for the duration of the raid run, he'll stick with us. And the Drifter loves the motes of dark that we bring to him in Gambit. I would not say, I'm not sure that he loves us, and Riven knows that. She's trolling us.
Quite literally, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think from Junto mentioned that, most of these raid mechanics are some pairing of design intent and how it fits into the greater narrative. And as John mentioned, one of the things we wanted to do with Last Wish was allow players to quickly and easily get to places they wanted to go. So one of the things, we'd noticed for a long time was going all the way back to Vault of Glass, when people were like, I just want to do the Templar, right? That's all I want to do is do the Templar, see if I get my Fatebringer, and see if we can get out of here. So one of the first things we did was like, well, could we do a secret that allowed you to go just where you wanted to go, right? If all you had time for was Riven tonight, can we put a way that you could just go into a wall, put in a cheat code, and boom, you're at Riven?
Cool.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not really, you're not letting people cheat. I
Sure.
wish you would let people cheat, but it's more about like you give players control. You give them. Catherine, you'd mentioned that you closed the raid.
Yes.
And for our players who are watching, describe for them what exactly that means. As a producer in production, like when we're closing something, when we're actually bringing the creative process to an end and giving them something to play, what is that like with a raid which has so many different disciplines and so many different complex things that come together?
Yeah, I mean, the closing process in general is one fraught with a lot of technical difficulties, I think. In the raid, it's definitely even more so. Joe was incredibly helpful. I rolled onto the team in July, which is about a month before.
We were
putting out a lot of fires still. So closing a raid is when the test team comes very much into play. They end up spending entire days playing the raid. You have 6 guys in a room in a very hot and sweaty room, and just wailing on it with all the different weapons that you can find, trying to find ways that our players might actually be able to interact with it in such a way that might not be pleasant, guitar errors, things like that. So the test team was really good, trying to understand like what?
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, okay. Trying to understand all the different requirements for ships. So we had to talk to Activision about our launch date. We had to figure out what our light level was before releasing. We did a really interesting thing called K to Raid.
Yeah. So some of the people out here on boxes right now are part of a group that we called K to Raid, which was sort of a Forsaken initiative led by me and another producer here named Jared Burbach, who I'm quite fond of. And we wanted to simulate what it was going to be like to play Forsaken when it comes out. And so we knew that the way people play Destiny is they don't play it for an hour or 2 hours, which is maybe the time you normally have within a standard workday to play the game. And so we were fortunate through all the way up through Bungie leadership up to Janti to say, can we get some of the best Destiny players in the studio, and can we get 3 weeks of their time?
Wow.
And so for 3 weeks, we offlined about 15 people. A lot of these people do things that are much more important at Bungie than what I do.
To simulate the player journey.
And we just played from the very second you meet Cade 6 to the very second you go into the raid. And a lot of that data was very helpful for us, picking exactly where the raid was going to sit power level wise.
So as they delve deeper into the activity, Andrew, give us a sense of what the main inspirations were for this design palette, and what did you want the art about this environment to tell players about the experience?
Sure. So the big thing was, well, we were working alongside the Dreaming City, which was new for a raid experience. And you'll see in the next encounter where you can actually see back to the other bubbles, which is unique to this raid as well. So the big thing was that we wanted it to feel like you were outside of the city until you really crossed a threshold behind those giant walls. I believe that's the Morgeth encounter. So leading up to it, you have a lot more natural palette, and the first encounter is all inside like this indoor cave area. Once you break through there, we can talk more about it once we get to the bridge area, but that's kind of what was the inspiration for this area.
And so this here is the Wall of Wishes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we were really excited to put in the game. We really wanted a thing where the community could go back and they could sort of record all the different wishes they found and talk about them and talk about different ones that may or may not exist in the game. One of the things I think was successful was, this thing has something like 200 billion combinations that you could possibly put into the wall.
Is that a real number, or is that a hyperbolic number? Is it really 200 billion?
I think it's more than that.
Is it really?
Yeah, because we joked that like, I dare you to brute force it, and people were like, "Don't say that," but go ahead.
Have fun.
So which wish are we casting today?
It's going to be a wish for love and support. I forget which number it is.
Everyone in chat wants 15. We're not doing 15.
We're not doing 15 today,
Okay.
but maybe someday.
And you handpicked the wish that we would be casting today.
Yeah. I like the Drifter a lot as a character, and I figured that since a lot of people might not have seen his version of the raid, he replaces all of Riven's dialogue after you've inputted this wish code, and he's going to be the one taking us through. Okay. Fictionally, we've sort of contextualized this, the wishing wall machine as the Queen was trying to find a way to kind of contain the amount of damage that an Ahamkara could do from wishing with it, because the idea is that like there's a lot of spaces between words that a metaphysical creature could twist to its advantage if I ask it for something, but we suddenly get a lot more specific when we're talking about specific icons and a visual language.
So Joe, as they begin each encounter, when you talked about the beanstalk, when you talked about stealing the heart of the monster, I'm always interested to understand how these creations begin. What was the essential goal? You bring together art, you bring together engineering, you bring together storytelling, activity design, puzzling, investment. Raids are the pinnacle activity for our players as well as the people here who work at Bungie. So as these encounters begin, give us just kind of a summary of what was the essential goal, what was the essential meta experience that you wanted to create for players outside of just kill scary monsters and get cool stuff.
Sure. So one of the things that we get a lot on the raid team is like, is there like a secret sauce to making raids? And I think that we've said it almost every time we go on the stream, and that's that like we always, like you said, start with some core experience that we want to have happen for each encounter. And so early on in development, we get all these lovely people into a room, and we just start writing down weird things on a wall. Sometimes they're like kid games. Sometimes they're other video games that we love that we think we could pull some elements from into a raid. This encounter was Jake Meyer's brainchild, and this is, I believe, we ended up going with Duck Duck Goose.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And so this idea that you were gonna like run around and try to sort of hide in these like I'm sorry, it's not it's musical chairs.
Oh, that's
It's
right.
Musical chairs. I
Yes.
was wrong children's game. I was staring right at it. Musical chairs. So right, the idea that you're sort of in this scramble against this boss, and a bunch of different chairs open up, and you have to go find yours, right? Like, and there's that moment where like me and Hops run for the same room, and we're like, I guess this isn't gonna work.
Time to wipe.
And you used to be safe in the same one, but then we made sure.
Yeah,
You couldn't
one of
hang
the
out with
really
somebody in the same
early
chair.
things was like you could shove like 5 people into a locker, and we're like, well, this is fun, but it's the only way people will ever
Yeah.
play. So we try to sort of make some of those calls early.
And so fictionally here, we're using the Dreaming City architecture itself to try to repel the Taken invasion that's kind of happened here. The Queen and the Reefborn Awoken have left a lot of, I guess you could call it technology in the Dreaming City that goes beyond light and dark that the Guardians are able to figure out within the span of this encounter to be able to leverage that to purify the Taken tech witches of Taken corruption.
Just one piece of housekeeping, just a show note. We have gone into sub-only mode. We do that just to keep the conversation at a reasonable level. We take all of the money that we earn from our Twitch subscriptions, and we donate all of it to the Bungie Foundation. So at bungiefoundation.com, you can read all about it. Our mission is to ease the distress and suffering of children who are in the hospital. So if they're there for treatment, if they have a life-threatening illness, we're there to raise their spirits. We drop iPads loaded with games into their hands, and we bring gaming and entertainment into their lives to make sure that their stay and the challenges that they face are bolstered by something that makes them happy. So thanks for the Twitch Prime subs. Just wanted to let you know why we do that and what our goals are with that. With that, go back to the raid. Looks like we're moving on into a new location. Hops, talk to us about the art here. This is what you always do, is you do this vertigo thing that makes my palms sweat. I just really don't deal well
All
with that.
about player journey. So we like to pace out encounters, give you a break from shooting. I know not everybody's in love with jumping, but
Nope.
especially this area, the idea is sanctioned and unsanctioned space. So it was very purposeful that you're climbing around underneath the bridge, and being on top of the bridge is more of, the official path that Awoken would have taken, but we're not supposed to be here, so we're, sneaking around underneath it.
What I love about this is one of the few times where you're in a space in a raid that you can see from outside the raid.
Yeah.
And you can look down and see the space.
Yeah, if whoever's on camera, if you look back, you see out in the skybox, and this is Eric Castles and Mark Goldsworthy, you can see, clues of the rest of the destination from the Dreaming City.
We're walking towards the second Tech Witch encounter.
Yep.
Right? And one of the things that I wanted to call out, really proud of the team doing a good job on, is both these first 2 encounters, the designers set out with a goal of, what if the boss was in your face all the time, right? Like we wanted a lot of face time with all the bosses in the raid, and traditionally the raid team has been in a pattern of like, well, you're gonna do a puzzle, and then the boss will become vulnerable, and then you'll be able to shoot the boss, and you'll get to do that for a little while, and then you'll have to do another puzzle. And I think both these fights, we wanted to break that up in a different sort of interesting way. With that first encounter, you can shoot the boss anytime she appears, right? And she's always just as vulnerable. And the team was pretty hard on Jake, and they were like, what if someone, they all use Celestial Nighthawk and they kill her in 2 seconds? And Jake was like, it's the first encounter. That's cool, right? Like, and it's an okay thing to do. And I'm really happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, that's where
Taking
players
the
are at
risks.
now, which is cool.
Jake is a very nice man. He always says hi to me in the hallway. I don't care what people say. Jake is a beautiful person.
What were you going to say, Catherine?
I was just saying, I usually just point at John in the hallway. Just point at him.
Why would you do that?
Catherine, of all the encounters that we're going to see today, which one was the most complicated to close?
I'd say Riven, definitely. Just in terms of like, I mean, do you not agree?
No.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, you can go next. But why was Riven complicated?
I'm just thinking in terms of like all the different, just actually killing her in the end was really hard. But
No, I agree with you.
Yes.
I was saying sorry that was true.
oh yes.
That was my apology.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Yeah, I mean, closing any raid, I get the impression that actually getting people internal to the team to be able to finish it is the longest process that we have. Raids are hard. There are pinnacle activities. Like, our designers and our testers are some of the best gamers in our studio, but like, you know, we build things to be really hard, and sometimes we can't even finish them. And so it usually all coalesces towards like the end of a project, and you're just like, I understand, like I get this mechanic now, and we have our own strats, and it's always fun, like especially on the day that we release a raid, to see what strats people come up with. Like, that's one of our favorite things.
Fun and horrifying.
It's fun and horrifying. We were all here in the theater watching everybody finish the raid in the real world, and I was here until 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, you
and
went
so
the
were
distance,
you.
right?
Yeah, we were.
You were there to the bitter end, right? Yeah, high
Yep.
fives. High
Yep.
fives.
3,
No sleep
2, 1.
till raid clear.
No sleep till raid clear.
So we're looking at Shuro Tree right now, right? The second of the two Tech Witches. This was a Chris Manprin brainchild. Our experience that we wanted to do here was what it felt like to chase a boss up a tower, which again was a totally new challenge. We're lucky we've got like a crack shot level designer in Brian Frank on the team, who's been making Halo missions for forever and did some of my like favorite Destiny missions, like the Archive, and so we really leaned a lot on him on encounters like this. We're like, we're gonna do an encounter, but it's gonna be 3 stories, and you're gonna climb all the way up it. And like,
Yeah.
Hobbs worked his tail off on this thing.
Yeah. Well, we had to be really smart about how we built this space, because it was a lot of real estate for one boss, but it came out really nicely.
Just to tack onto your shout out to Brian Frank, he's going to be leading development on the next raid
He
that
is.
our players will play.
He is.
So, as you move on to do some other interesting things at Bungie. So,
Yes.
people in our community who know Joe Blackburn as the lead of the raid team, you know, just like yourselves, we're always embracing new challenges around here. He's not leaving us. He's not going anywhere. Okay, we're all very tactile on the screen today.
We're all very tactile.
Tactical.
Tactical, tactile.
One of the really interesting challenges about this boss fight was we, from a very early standpoint, said if the boss fight is about chasing a boss up a tower, you have to always get to the top of the tower for it to be cool, right?
Yes.
Which put us in this sort of weird pickle, right? Because we want to make fights where people's investment matters, and they feel like they're getting stronger, and they feel like, yeah, like I'm so much better at this fight than I was when I first started, which would lead you to a situation where you're like, oh, well then you're going to kill the boss like way before it gets to the top of the tower. So Chris had this crazy design constraint where it's like the fight always has to end at the top, and players have to feel like they get better at it, right? And so we did a scary thing where like there's a bunch of immune phases where the boss says like no more DPS, like I'm moving on. But I think it's contextualized really well here. He worked really hard in making it make sense why the boss moves to their platform. And I think the other thing that's really powerful is players have really tight control over how fast they can get to the next one. So you are always in control of when Shurochi is going to become vulnerable again, right? And it's just about how fast you can slay.
Hops, it feels like we're in the same place throughout this, but we're seeing a lot of different types of places. And one of the most important things about raid design from my perspective, as somebody who's very bad at playing them, is that the environment tells a story, but the environment also gives you crucial player feedback on how to solve these riddles, especially in a room like this. So talk to us a little bit about what's going on here, and how did the design of this space also contribute to the player experience?
Yeah, this would be a great one for our VFX lead, Mike, but
take
So
three.
we had to
Or
get
four.
players up
3,
this
2,
tower,
1, this one.
and obviously we had to make room for them
Oh,
to.
they're screwing up the puzzle right now.
So we got it. It's good.
We had to make,
No, they're saying it's good.
Right,
They're saying it's good.
Front left.
but because they're good at the encounter, they have lots
Jump
of
on
time to
front
figure it
left.
out, right?
3, 2, 1.
So we had to get players around the tower, up the outside of the tower. Obviously, with such a tall tower, they couldn't just constantly be moving uphill around the outside of the tower. So there's this section here where we took advantage of the orrery, and as players complete the puzzle, it falls into place for them to jump up to the next area. And then also, as you ascend the tower, you get the presence of the Taken. So at the very top, you'll notice all the trees are dead and some of the areas are shattered.
So fictionally, while you're trying to help repel the Taken out from the Dreaming City, the Dreaming City doesn't know that, and so the awoken security measures that are still in place are impeding you from getting up the tower. So not only are you having to fight the Taken, you're having to sort of smartly bypass all the stuff that the awoken have put in place to keep invaders from getting in.
2, 1.
Yeah, and that core that Hops and John were talking about, the security measures, that was one of the first things that was ever built in this raid. One of the earliest challenges we put in front of the team was make a very simple game that's just fun to play with 6 players. It doesn't have to feel like a raid encounter, but it has to feel like something that we'd be comfortable eventually making into a raid encounter. And so it was just this room with a 3-sided puzzle, and you had 40 seconds to solve the puzzle and escape out before the room exploded. And I think from the first playtest we played that, we're like, yeah, this could be a raid encounter. This feels like it's fun.
Stephen, note from chat, that was a good, calm recovery from the raid team, says Jay Sniperton. So hang in there. In fact, we haven't had, I'm going to knock on wood real hard here, we haven't had one wipe yet. So I've
Nobody
been
gets
warned
fired.
that the entire developer panel here is just going to scream bloody murder if you guys wipe.
I
So.
was excited to scream bloody murder, and then I feel like I got robbed.
I mean, I'm already
Opportunity.
kind of screaming, kind of.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about
So,
that.
yeah. So you have made a very interesting and unique contribution other than closing the raid.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
So I used to work on the audio team as a content coordinator back in 2015 or so, and so I still have very close ties with the audio team. They're my boys and girls. Yeah, so when Zach Thomas was working on the audio design for the Tech Witches as combatants, he was like, I need a female voice to come in here and just do some screaming and chanting and hollering.
Yeah.
Catherine, you up? And I was like, sure. So that's me. I'm not the speaking voice. That's one of our fine voice actresses, but I can't remember who off the top of my head. But yep, that's me making all sorts of terrible screaming sounds. It's great. It's really weird when I'm raiding with my clan and they're like, Catherine, that's
There you are. There you are.
I'm like, yeah, let's kill us really fast, okay?
Screaming in strikes too.
Yeah, it's true. I am screaming in the strike.
Right, moving on to the next encounter. The transitions can be, in some cases, as challenging as the encounters themselves. Hops, at what point does a transition like this become too hard? At any
It's
point
just
in
a tree, Deej.
Well, yeah, I know, but like, I play as a warlock, all right? So
do I.
I did not do. Well, okay, then you're better. Then you're better than me. Let's just say that on screen. Andrew Hops is better than me. But do you ever find yourself developing something in terms of world art, and then you just reach a point in development where you say, "This is too hard. No one can get through this," and you have to pepper in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance. We've pulled back. We want the jumping puzzles to be more about fun than having 1 or 2 teammates get stumped for 5 minutes while everyone else goes and makes some food.
Which happened to me last night.
So this area in particular, there's 3 different paths up to this next jumping area, and the idea there was if you wanted the bonus chest, there was a hard route, an easy route that was longer, and then a really short route that bypassed the chest altogether. And it used to be that every one of those was its own jumping puzzle, but that kind of brought up the challenge of, well, first of all, you don't get to watch any of your teammates do the jumping puzzle, which is one of the most fun things, is watching people die.
Yep. Rip Petra's run.
So we consolidated all of that into this one moment where you go into the Ascendant realm, say, holy cow, and then you get to watch your teammates try to make it through.
Just watching this, my hands are sweating. And I'm not a person who's afraid of heights. You know, I've been to the top of the Sears Tower in Chicago, and I had no problem with it. But in our game, for some reason, these bottomless chasms, yeah, I wouldn't be dancing on that beam. I wouldn't be goofing off right now.
Do you have that picture of you in the glass box?
You
in the
know,
Sears
those
Tower?
glass boxes were actually after my time.
Oh.
So yeah, they installed those after I came out here to live and work with y'all. But yeah, watching this upsets me.
And Warlocks, put on Strafe Glide, please.
Yeah, I feel like we should just set that as like a precedent that all jumping puzzles, because most are made by Andrew Hops, are like Warlock approved.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, fellow Warlocks, you heard it here. Nothing left to complain about, except for maybe that guy.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I still remember getting in trouble for hiding a ghost in Wrath the Machine, like under the stairs somewhere.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Hops was like, Did you test this on any classes? Like, you can't even get back when you get there. And I'm like,
You have to go under a beam and up, which is almost impossible for a Warlock. You had to get real fancy.
So that privilege has been taken away from me, and now it's in the hands of professionals, and it should never happen again.
Yeah, this is that moment. You never want to be bringing up the rear in a jumping challenge like this.
I like the
Ooh.
Ascendant realm, though. It's a very quiet place.
It's kind of quiet, I
Sort of
guess.
quiet. It's a dull roar.
It's a dull roar.
What can you tell us about the Ascendant realm?
Well, you know, it's the place where Oryx used to hang out before we went to his throne world and killed him. Now the Taken are back.
Do you think he deserved it?
I don't know. We did kill his son.
We're the heroes.
Yeah, it's
We're
true.
heroes.
That's
We're
We're
always
good guys.
we cast our players in the role of the good guys.
Yep.
And so the Taken here now, we're actually not sure who's pulling the strings, because Oryx is dead, right?
I don't know. You
I
tell
mean,
me.
maybe.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know until we write it.
Jonto is one of my favorite people, and I'm so glad that we have him
I
on
appreciate
stream
that,
today
Joe.
Same words as yesterday.
to get all this tactile feedback.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, what are we doing?
while we're looking out here, so this was the other area. Once players have passed this first wall, you wanted this feeling that you finally entered the city. And so Eric Castles did this really cool stuff in the skybox off to the left and right. You see just a whole bunch of buildings off in the distance in the fog, and it really added a lot to the feeling of, okay, we've entered the city now, and now you'll get a whole bunch more of that architecture. And same thing, we're starting to ramp up the amount of Taken presence as we get closer to the main tower.
I really like this fight space. It's one of our most exterior
Right?
fight spaces that we've ever done. I think again, this is one where Brian came in and helped us a lot. I think the first pass at this was like twice as big, and he was like
Right.
the constant reminder of stop putting big bosses in big play spaces because then they look small, right? And that ogre is ginormous. Like if you ever go stand next to that thing, it is huge. And we did a lot of work to just even make it look as big as it is, but comparison-wise to Fogoth looks like a little baby next to him.
You even get the little mini ogres that
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh,
And
look,
This is
little
actually
friends.
the Drifter's favorite encounter because we're using Taken energy essentially to get stronger than this Taken and kill it. He loves inviting the Guardians to dabble in the dark.
And this is that is exactly what our experience statement was here, right? We wanted to do a fight that was about denying power from a more powerful creature, right? Like stealing that
Yeah.
power. And so we always sort of thought of it as you each had a cup, and there was sewage water,
Oh God.
and your cup can only hold so much sewage water. So it was a
Are
game
you
about
trying to give it to other people?
yeah, and that's how it works, right? John Tell will get captured, and then someone else, the only way you can free him is by pouring all his sewage water into your cup, and if it overflows, you die.
I see.
As you do.
Because you don't want to touch it. The water.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
gross sewage
It's gross,
water.
and you're like, oh, it's
Did
on my
you
hands.
at any point think of this as a sequel to Jogoroth? Or being Golgoroth.
That's his Twitter name.
Yeah, right. Or was this just?
I think I have a thing for ogres.
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
think I just like them.
Yeah.
They're big.
They're good.
They're like they feel like sort of a classic fantasy monster. But Brian Frank took the reins on this guy pretty early, and he did an awesome
For
job.
sure.
Before they kill him, I'm going to take off when this guy's dead. But our lighting artist, Thad Steffen, did this really cool thing throughout this raid, which is he ramped the saturation. So early on, you get a lot of color. And as the raid goes on, you'll notice that there's less and less color in the raid overall, just through palette and through lighting. And after you beat the raid, all that color pops back in the final gameplay space. So when you get into the next area, you'll notice it's very desaturated. I think it's like a kind of a blue. And then you go up. When you come back and it comes back, it's like, I think it's like a bright pink or something. Otherwise, shout out to Frank Robbins and Rusty Durbin, who worked on this a ton. They brought this to a whole nother level. And then, of course, our palette team. Those guys are amazing. They work on everything. All right, I'm going to sub out to our VFX lead, Mike Stavridis, who's been working on raids as long as I can remember. So
Wonderful.
thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Andrew Hobbs, thanks for being with us for the first half of the journey. Let's go, actually, while we make the substitution, check in with our raid team. Steven, good job so far.
Thanks. Everyone's pulling their own weight. That one recovery on Shirochi was real clean.
So this is obviously not the first time you've all raided together. You've been training for this stream. Talk to us a little bit about how the room is set up today, because you're using every element of this setting for tactical gain.
Yeah, absolutely. We're facing each other in 2 teams of 3, and we've split ourselves up so that one of those teams of 3 will be crystal side on Riven, and one will be tree side. And other than that, we've spent the past week or so just practicing our roles, making sure everyone knows what they might be required to flex on in terms of like switching to a different role, that kind of thing.
And you got an equal distribution of class designations?
Oh yeah, well you got to have 2 of each because that just feels right.
Wonderful. All right, well, if you're ready to move along, we're ready to continue with the developer commentary with a new developer in one of the hot seats. Please welcome Mike Stavridis on the visual effects team.
Yes, correct.
So give our viewers just a quick summary of what your discipline is and how important it is to raid design.
Sure. So visual effects, I mean, Destiny in general has, like almost every frame you look at has some kind of visual effect happening between either weapons or environment effects. There's sandbox elements like those orbs that was just supporting with the ogre. The ogre itself, how it has those sacks and the attacks. Those are all different like elements of visual effects. And the space actually they're approaching here is one of the areas that was the look dev for how the curse states worked. So
What is a look dev?
Oh yeah, sorry. So the idea of the curse states happened, and people need to figure out exactly like when a taken infestation is happening, what exactly does that look like in the Destiny world? And so instead of just having many artists try to figure it out on their own, it's better just to try to isolate it to a few people. So Noah was the environment artist here, and he also was handling a lot of the look dev of figuring out exactly what a curse state for the
Wrong
Destiny
raid.
Forsaken would be. Yeah, sorry. And so in this space, he essentially came up with how the taken kit would work of if a building needs to look like it's taken over by taken, what does it look like? And then we figured out some particle treatments as well. And you can see all the little like orb blights in the air and how they're scattered about. And so once that was done, art direction could come weigh in and say what they liked and didn't like. And then from there, people can start propagating out to all the different curse states. This is just a section of it, because then later on there's the, in the air, you'll actually see a bunch of taken motes and things like that. And I think that was worked on by Jeremy Baldwin and Vanessa Mayer. And so it's essentially any one little item in Destiny is actually many, many hands kind of working on it and figuring it out together.
Moments like these that our marketing team, our VizD team that works on the Vidocs together, it's great to have Mason visiting the stream and sitting in first chair, because there's a unique skill set to playing a game in a way that other people will spectate. So when we're creating the media that we share on the internet, we have these talented people who are, I would say, like 30% cinematographer, 70% warrior. So it's nice to have these gentle sweeps of the beautiful art that you've all created. I think if we've covered the establishing shot here, our raid team can move on. And Joe, give us a sense of what they'll be tackling next and how you wanted that to feel for them.
Sure. So they're about to go into the lock encounter, but before they get there, they're actually going to end up for the final destination of the raid here in this room right here. So this is where the raid ends. We knew going into this raid that we wanted to do something different. We wanted to have an escape sequence that sort of harkens back to that like Halo 3 final mission where you're like, you think you're done, no, like you got to run out with the thing. And so we knew we needed a place to come back to, and this was built by Noah as this sort of statue of Riven before she was fully taken that the Woken people would come look at, and this is where you take the heart of Riven to be cleansed at the end. So you'll see these guys come back through this space at the end through a lot of technical wizardry.
And Sam Arguez here, he was the artist that made the little player lift here. And from the visual effects side, it's actually pretty difficult to figure out what a whole new palette of effects looked like, because we already have so many different languages of there's Taken, there's Fallen, all different combatant races, and then adding Awoken as a new style that has to also blend together but also be readable as its own unique flavor. I think that lift was actually one of his first kind of explorations for what would an Awoken style magic type thing look like.
Before we start, do we want to show them fans concept art for this, the lock?
I think it's loaded up there, right?
Or do they? I don't know how we get it on screen.
Well, let's find out.
There you go.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
perfect.
All right. And we're
So
there.
who did that concept art?
Fan Gao did that concept art. We had a lot of hits. So this experience is all about cracking a safe, right? And we actually tried a lot of different ways for that to come about. And our first hits were pretty different. And we finally settled on something that required a little bit more communication. And so we did a lot of work on how do we, what does an Awoken security measure look like, and how does it move, and these elements of the space, the cover that moves around when you solve the lock, it all goes into that.
Okay.
So you did a great job.
Let's take a look at the actual environment again. Raid team, weapons free.
All right. So sushi's on rocks.
And so yeah, all this tech is meant to keep us from being able to get to Riven, even though she very badly at this point wants us to get to her and fight her. I think to my memory, I think she is the only boss to have ever wanted you to kill her in Destiny.
I think you're right.
Except for, I mean,
kind of
they're
matches
not,
up.
Palace is kind of.
they're not bosses, but exploding shanks.
Oh.
Exploding shanks and cursed thrall.
Maybe they just want hugs.
They
They
just wanted
want us
hugs.
to shoot them as well, but we won't be tricked.
One of the things Janto talks about Riven, and one of the things I always like to do is talk about how wrong I was about something. We right now have the Drifter speaking, and that's replaced all of Riven's dialogue, but for our normal raiders, they'll know that it's Riven of 1,000 voices, and Riven talks to you sort of mimicking all the different members of the Vanguard or some like primary players.
Now, specifically, our lead writer, Jason Harris, it was a detail that he wanted to get in. He pushed hard to get in.
I was super scared of this at first. I was like, oh no, players aren't going to understand. They're going to think that, like, why is Zavala talking to me? They're going to be so confused. And I was like, what if we just have Sloane's voice actor do it? Like, she has a pretty good dragon voice.
Right.
And Janto and Mallory and Jason Harris, they all pulled me into a room and was like, just listen to it.
Yeah,
and we listened to it. I was like, okay, this is really good. Sorry.
fair.
Mallory Schleif.
Mallory Schleif, yes.
Schleif never lies.
Senior writer, and she's amazing.
Oh,
I got
what happened there?
Legend of Actress.
I think
no
this is
raid.
actually this was another space I think that Brian Frank worked on, right? And he helped actually
Elevator?
design a bunch of the layout for
Yep.
the. So there's the taken walls that show up, and they actually deny access to some of the lanes that you'll see, the 3 different sections of the map. And he came up with the idea of having these little like cave routes that actually reroute you back to the main play space after you get blocked by the taken goop.
That's nice.
Yeah.
One of
So-
my, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Last one.
One of my favorite memories of making this raid is we did a lot of iteration on this fight and trying to figure out a puzzle that really worked. and at some point, Brian Frank comes over to my desk, and he's just got like his hands full of like paper, and he like spills out this like paper puzzle all over my desk, and he's like, "What if it was like this?" And he starts moving all these pieces of paper around, and I was like, I think that makes sense. Like,
Oh, was
it
that
did.
the lock
It did.
ideation?
He had a bunch of
And
different locks.
to that, for the visual effects team, we're actually pretty technical for how we do engine work as well. And so when designers are coming up with ideas like these crazy lock mechanisms, we actually support them in prototyping. And so in this one space alone, I think there was something like 5 or 6 different artists who were working on there. So we had Darren Lancey and Andy Shao who attacked that lock. Then Tommy Mabe and Stefan Williams also added art into the space as well. And this is just for one bubble alone. And the amount of iteration to get that lock correct and actually working in engine was pretty substantial. Overall, this whole raid is actually probably one of our more technical, like engine side raids that we've made. It may not look and feel, and actually I hope it doesn't look and feel that way when you're playing it, but actually what's going on behind the scenes is actually pretty impressive for it.
And that's one of the things that we do with these streams is we do kind of pull back the curtain and dispel a little bit of the magic. You know, even hearing some of your stories, you know, I think people would be interested to hear about what goes into a raid, but we do kind of shatter that fantasy. You know, this is something that exists inside of their imaginations, but you know, Catherine, as somebody who presides over the rooms where final testing is happening, I'm sure someone who loves raids would love to be a fly on the wall when we're playing something when it's in development.
Oh, they'd have a blast.
What would you describe the mood being like in those rooms? You know, is it frustrated? Is it jovial? I guess it depends on the day, right?
I think the raid team is probably one of the healthiest teams that we have at the studio. Everyone's very friendly with each other.
Those Red Bulls for breakfast.
Jonathan Toe's getting tactile.
John's been part of the team forever. He's close friends with most people, probably everyone on the team. I think.
Tell me more.
Tell you more. You don't
What
know.
other good words
I
you
think.
have
I
for
think.
him?
I think the mood in those rooms is always there's like a healthy competition. I guess I've had arguments with Hops in the past about what weapon to use in that room. He's like, "Why would you use a bow?" And I was just be like, "Cause it's fun. I'm having fun." And I mean, yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that's really important about the raid team is that everyone on the raid team plays a ton of Destiny, and specifically plays a lot of raids. So one of the things when Catherine came on as our producer that we were pretty adamant about, and I'm so happy that Catherine came on to be our producer, was like she has to play raids, right? Like whoever comes on, like you have to be so immersed in this. And anytime someone comes just to work on the raid, right? If they're just making a contribution that doesn't take a lot of amount of time, but it's still really important. We're like, get in a play test, like play it a few times before you make something, because we want people to know exactly like how the thing they're making impacts the project as a whole.
I think our strongest experiences are made by like the most variety of people. Like it's just like, so we have designers in the room, we have testers in the room, we have VFX artists playing, combatants designers, writers, like all these people getting into a room and being able to give feedback. Like a producer may not be able to give feedback and other things in the company, but like then it's lacking for it, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest benefit is to get other people's opinions that maybe don't directly work on that thing, but have a totally different worldview of the game. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're like, oh, did you think about this? And we're like, oh no, we didn't think about that.
because you
That's
can
a
get
great
these
point.
like these blinders on. You're like, I'm a designer and this is my design focused thing, and then you're like, wait, oh, the world is so bright.
That's why diversity is so important to game design, because we're creating something for any number of people. Diversity of discipline, diversity of perspective, diversity of life experience. It just makes what we create so much richer.
One of the things that I did want to touch on while we're in this encounter specifically is this encounter is pretty mechanically complex, right? There are 3 people here that are doing a puzzle that is challenging enough that a lot of people use a pencil and paper when they do it, or one of our community websites to help them figure this out. But there's another whole half of the team that is in like primary slayer, right? Like one of the really goals early on for this raid was we'd done Kingsfall and we'd done Leviathan, really mechanic heavy raids, and we wanted to get sort of that puzzle flair, but keep everything also grounded towards like Destiny's a game about shooting aliens with guns, right? And like you are never going to feel at a point in this raid where you're not shooting aliens with guns.
Right.
I was in a pickup group for Last Wish last night. I'm still trying to get my 1,000 voices. And the guy who was leading it told one guy, he was like, all you need to do in this whole raid is shoot things. Like, there is a role for you in this raid if all you know how to do is put your cursor over a taken thrall's head and pull the trigger.
So that's why you wouldn't help me get Luna's Hell yesterday.
Yes.
Wow.
He's busy.
John Tone needs a lot of help.
I need a lot of help to get Luna's
How
Hell.
many points are you
I'm
away?
not
If there's
ready
anyone
for that
out there
care.
who's willing to help,
Yeah, well, we have a very large community, and many of them are watching you right now. So I'd like to offer up a shameless plug.
I need it. I need help. Someone help me.
Impassioned
I had
LFG in real
1,100 points yesterday. Now I don't.
1,100 is not close.
No.
I know.
We should be
Well,
very
that's
clear.
about 1,000 points away.
time. Well, you have a little over a week, so get to it.
I wrote the tab on that gun. It's not fair.
Now, moving away from Luna's Howl
Yeah.
and back to Last Wish. This is Riven's room. Oh, before we start the fight, we have so
more,
much
yeah.
Riven stuff to show.
Okay, raid team, let's hold for some concept art retrospectives. So what are we looking at here?
So Riven was one of our most ideated on bosses maybe ever.
Yep.
She went through a bunch of different looks. A bunch of the first concepts were done by Dorsey. You can actually see those. Those are on like ArtStation now.
Yeah.
Highly recommend taking a look. There's a huge spread of a bunch of things that Riven looked in a bunch of different ways. And Jamie Rowe came on to finish the job, and this is one of the first things I saw from her when she was on. Mm-hmm. And she just did these like fantastic notebook sketches that I one day hope to steal from her notebook and take back to my home.
Yeah, this is my first time seeing the like comic book style. It's like I want a whole just comic of Riven.
We have many
Riven.
copy machines right here in the studio. I'm sure if you were to ask nicely.
I want to smell it,
The
Dean.
original. Okay.
And so we saw this, and I think everyone is sort of aligned, like, yeah, that's an Ankar, right? Like, that is a cool space dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of our first moments where, like, okay, let's make this thing. And then we can go show next. This is what Riven looked like last December.
Ship it.
It's ready to go.
So the raid team worked really hard to get a full front-to-back playable version of the raid up last December, and a bunch of people internally, there was like a race to world's first, right? World's first in progress. And Riven, just being fresh out of concept with like the boss team was slaving away on her, and they did an amazing job, by the way. The boss team does not get near enough credit for what they do, and they knocked it out of the park. And so what we put in place of Riven was a block that I believe was created by Rusty, and she had triangles for eyes. And so you could shoot the triangles and do the puzzle, but we just shove a big block into rooms and be like, here, imagine a Riven.
It's off
right?
ice.
Like, here we
Imagine
go.
a dragon peeking through a window.
And next, I think, we can show you, this is what one of the world's first in progress team strategy guides for
Right
Riven
there on the
looks like.
whiteboard. Yeah. Okay.
You can see some of the old symbols before we got our awesome Dorje symbols in there. We used to have birds and leaves and
I
flowers.
mean, we still have birds.
We still have birds. Birds made the cut. The leaves and flowers, I feel like you had to be like a plantologist.
Yeah, you're just
to
like, that's an obviate leaf. This is a pinnate.
I'm just ready for these.
The flowers were the.
The flowers are no, it was gross.
But one thing we did look, if you look at that picture and you look at the original concept, Riven's eyes used to be straight across. They were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the boss team, rightly so, was like, hey, we want to make the eyes look more like eyes, not like a line of circles on a boss's face. And we're like, that's probably smart. Also, this game is way too easy because you just talk about them in some easy to decipher manner. And so when Riven finally got her tin full eyes and her like awesome unique pattern, it was really satisfying to see those first groups, different ways they talked about them, right? Some number them 0 through 10, some number them left to right. I saw someone did a dice pattern. Whoever that was, you're insane. Like, that's the weirdest way to quantify your eyes. To you. And yeah, I'm really happy with how that turned out.
And then finally, we have something closer to the finished product.
Big girl.
Yeah, I think this is the view that you never really get to see, right?
Yeah, you never can see like the whole dragon in one go.
Yeah, so this is Riven on her crystal. So we sort of fictionalized a long time ago that this used to be, if you remember walking into this room, you pass a bunch of exhibits, different planets, like that the Awoken could walk through a museum, and this was the pinnacle of the museum, right? They'd captured an Ahamkara, and people could go and look at these windows and see Riven and like all of her glory. But before Riven was a Riven, I think we have one video to show you
Where's the video?
what it looks like before.
We're going to show that later, maybe?
I think
That's
right
right.
before the draw.
That sounds good.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So this is one of the earliest gray block models of the space. We didn't have a Riven, but we did have a giant scaled up knight.
Okay.
And then you just turn it upside down, it becomes a dragon. I mean, really,
Once it's upside
you can't
down,
tell. It's dragon
it's
just
time.
like,
really
yeah.
a dragon. So this will sort of give you some of the ideas of what it's like real early in development.
That's amazing.
I don't know if they look at the doors here, but what you might be able to see if you get a view of a door is that there are still trees and crystals. In this very early gray block, one of the first things we knew was all these rooms are going to look exactly the same because Riven has to be able to fit into all of them equally. And so we're like, one half of the room needs an identifying factor, and the other half of the room needs an identifying factor, and that's why we have
Okay.
trees and crystals.
Well, let's go back to the actual raid that we shipped. And to your point before, let's shoot some stuff. Raid team, weapons free. Thanks for hanging out for a minute so that we could take that walk down memory lane.
I'm sorry I talked so long.
No,
this is
great.
why
You're
we're
doing,
doing
you're
this.
doing amazing. You're our pillar, Joe.
I'm writing them down, don't worry.
If you go too long, Catherine will shut you down. You'll get produced.
That's happened in real life.
So I guess to reiterate on why Riven wants us to kill her.
Yes.
She, like all Ahamkara, every wish that is made to her, she grants, and then to her it's a bargain, so she gets something out of it as well. In this case, she has kind of proactively, knowing that everyone who comes into the raid has one major desire, and that is to kill the raid boss and get loot. She knows this, and so as soon as you sort of step across that threshold and kill her, she's got you. She uses her death and your wish of her death to power the curse that is now sort of the players are playing through every week in the Dreaming City. And she's also not as dead as she appears after you've fired that final bullet. As with all the Ahamkara that are in the lore stories, when they die, you always end up hearing whispering or a voice that wasn't there before, and the voice ends up always being there. So it remains to be seen whether we've seen the last of Riven or not. But she does talk to us after we've finished this encounter.
Great boss reveal, by the way. I remember the first time I ever saw this, we were just at our desks on the community team.
Vertical fish.
And Cosmo had just come back from a play test, and he was like, hey,
That's the one.
want to see the new raid boss? And just played a video of that, you know, and then just this huge face coming out of nothing and you know, screaming at the room was awesome. When you were in the theater watching the players experience this for the first time during their world first runs, you know, what were some of the reactions when they saw Riven for the first time?
That's you,
Sorry.
Catherine. Go up.
I don't know, actually. I don't really remember that as much. People were just like screaming and excited. Like, I think watching people drop, that was the big moment, right? Because everyone was like, oh my goodness, what is this?
It's interesting to see also if they would, on that first drop, read that they're actually right next to like a dragon or not.
I think it took like a couple wipes before people were like, oh, now I get it.
Right.
That's a leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the sheer size. Like, we've never done anything as big as Riven before in this game. Like, Oryx was pretty big, but she's our big girl. She's our biggest girl.
Yeah, we had a few weird constraints on us, and that's that we knew we wanted to go inside Riven at the end of Riven.
And the first time you told me that, I was like, you're like, in my head, I try to like build what is being told to me, and I was like, I have no idea how you get inside and crawl your way into a dragon after you just like killed it. And
Yeah, I remember being a little confused at first.
Yeah, the raid team has maybe a bad habit or a good habit of like constantly wanting to one-up itself. And we're like, oh, we're gonna do a big mega boss. And they're like, well, we already did Oryx. Like, but you didn't go inside.
Just sent him floating away.
Goodbye.
And so we knew Riven had to be big enough, right, to fit Guardians inside of her. And once we had the rooms built out, we knew Riven had to be big enough to be menacing in the space. That's why she like takes up so much of the space. She's not just pressing her face on the glass. She's like actually going inside the room. And by the time we'd sized her appropriately to be big enough for both those experiences, when we were falling down the tank, you're like, oh my god, like this thing. I just see tail, right? That's all I see when I fall down.
in the original one, you're also like, you used to shoot eggs on the side or something, right?
Oh, no,
And
no,
then
that's
that
the
got
next
changed.
phase.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
but, like, as you're-
originally, Mike's right. Like those eventually became the.
They
eggs
eventually
for
became the bow egg hunt.
the bow eggs.
Yeah,
We built those because we were like, oh, it's gonna be too hard to shoot the giant boss. We'll just have eggs floating off in space. And we played it and we're like, I want to shoot the giant boss.
There's such weird meetings too. It's like, I don't know, there's probably like 10 people in that room, and you're talking about like, there's eggs on the side, but they're kind of goopy connected to the center. We're trying to like all close our eyes and picture this weird encounter in our head of like falling next to a dragon and shooting its eggs and having it like reel in pain and be just very distraught.
I should mention here, the first time we ever did Riven's fall, it wasn't a slow fall. Instead, there was a trampoline on the bottom. And so you would fall down and you would hit the trampoline and you'd bounce there and you'd fly up and down shooting Riven, which you thought, oh, this is going to be cool, right? And Brendan Thorne, a raid designer and also like responsible for the Shattered Throne, who does not get motion sickness, came to me and said, that fight made me physically ill. We're like, okay, well let's scratch that idea off the list and try something new. So we made it. We compromised. We creatively pivot.
Got all the different perspectives, took feedback.
And now they're going to do it again.
Now they're going to do it again.
So this is what we called, like, we wanted this to feel like you were an X-Wing and you were doing a bombing run on a Star Destroyer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you can see like, actually your screen gets kind of wet with droplets when you
gross.
pop these.
That's right.
So the artist who did that, he specifically wanted that reaction from people of like when it happened. He's like, I want someone in this room to say, "Oh, gross!" So, like when it happened, and then the first time he this is Glenn Gamble who did this part. He checked it in for the ogre, and he didn't tell anyone. And then a playtest happened, and then someone was like, "Oh, gross!" He's like, "Yeah."
You did.
I get it. He did it. Yeah.
We're about to come on another experience that was a really hard challenge for the team really late in development, and that's that Riven, for technical reasons, always has to die in the same spot. She always has to die at the top of the tank, out of the same window. And really early versions of this fight had you being able to get Riven to her last percentage of health, but you still had to climb the whole tower after she was done, because we needed you to get back up to the top of the tank so you could watch Riven die. And it was awful. It was like the worst thing where you're like, I know I beat the fight and now I just have to climb to the top of the tank. So we needed a way to get players up there instantly. Yeah. And what you'll see here in a second is that through, I think, some creative brainstorming with people like Andrew Hops, we send you into the Ascendant realm to see an Ascendant version of Riven. And you get to do a sort of a different climb. But what this really allows us to do is, right, it's a gateway. We get to teleport you in one side and teleport you out the other side, so you always end up where you need to be.
One of the nice things about the Ascendant realm is, it was, for the most part, it was two effects artists. It was Kaylee and Jeremy who made essentially like a kit.
Full names.
Kaylee Frizzle and Jeremy Baldwin.
Thank you.
And they made this great kit that essentially design can place in different play spaces, and it just kind of like insert Ascendant realm here, and then it's kind of good to go.
Yeah, and we are very thankful for that because this was like we didn't have budget or time or anything. And
Just
we
like,
were
what can we do really quick?
Please, can you help us? Like, we've got ourselves into a hole. And with his help and the help of those fine people making that kit, we were able to put something together. It's pretty cool.
I do love all the shout outs, when you recognize the different people from your various disciplines that work on this, because raids are complex. There's so many people that work on these. I think a single raid could be, more elaborate in scope and scale than entire Bungie games that this company used to make and ship. So, Catherine, as a closer, on the production side, how many people do you feel like you're tracking throughout this process? It's got to be dozens.
Yeah, I think I had to invite at least 70 people to the Raid Theater watch along. I think in terms of if you have tests, you have the design team.
Yeah.
You have art and palette. You have the writers. You have production is important. You have combatants design. You have VFX. You have, oh my God, it just the list grows forever.
And also there are elements of the Last Wish narrative that are inextricable from the Dreaming City itself, which was huge, and a whole other team. Mallory Schleif was the narrative lead on that.
And Lars Bakken was the lead of Dreaming City in general.
Absolutely.
And was critical to helping, and everybody who worked on that destination as well. So if you think about it, basically most people in the studio worked on it.
I feel bad because we named some people here, but we don't come
Drop in
up
the
with
bucket.
words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There are so many people that are integral to this experience. Just in we're about to see the final fight space. And just getting hands on the outside of a crystal is a huge amount of work from a huge amount of people that you would not think would ever have to be involved in raids. But we're like, hey, we want to break something. They're okay, well, let me come over here and I'll help you out.
The hands at first they were pitched, and we actually didn't have a way to even make it work in the engine.
For people who don't know, you're actually getting beamed into the orb that the runner is carrying in that last encounter.
Yep. And those hands we were tech blocked by it at first, but then a graphics engineer kind of stepped up. He's like, nah, I can make this work. And he wrote some code on Rusty's desk, I think, and then because Rusty was making that little area of inside the heart of the oh no, the other one where you get teleported into.
Oh yeah.
And he wrote the tech to make essentially hands that we could show up outside or inside a crystalline type space, and then so it was desk side code being checked in for graphics, then could get handed over to us for a final pass of hands. And I think it was the first day or two when the raid was out, there was a Reddit or some thread started blowing up of people actually recognizing the hands.
Yeah,
and,
people didn't see it.
At first people just kind of it's sort of an afterthought.
Skybox,
Right. And I love it when the community kind of sees this thing that we actually kind of struggled a little bit to get into the game, and then it made it in. And at first no one notices it, but then all of a sudden when they see it, they're like, there's hands. It's literally my fire team, carrying me.
I think some of Destiny's biggest fans are people who work here who love seeing the community respond to what we create. And I think for people on the raid team, that moment in the theater where the raid team gets to get together and watch the raid be played is probably more meaningful than the full company launch party. That's really the moment where everybody gets to get together and see this race, to see this land rush where everybody goes in there, and for 18 hours?
19.
19 hours you were down in that theater. And I was getting text messages we're still here. Is it cool that we're still here? Can we tweet when they finish it? And I was just delirious.
You're like, what?
I'm going to pass out soon.
It's good learning too. It's great to watch the community come together to perform the race, but also it's interesting in a way of finally seeing people who are outside the walls, truly for the first time experiencing this thing, and how do they interpret what we're putting in front of them. And actually one of the things I always laugh about is anytime a new element essentially drops into the game, everyone just machine guns it and sees if it's a thing. Like when that orb first time it came down, it was shoot it. There's a heart, shoot that too. They get to the vignette, they dunk it, shoot that.
We're in the belly of the beast right now, so let's bring this thing home.
Guys, look on the screen how healthy Riven's gut flora is. It's very important. Probiotics. Everyone's gut should look like that.
I don't think mine line should look blue? I think that seems bad.
No, this is specific. A lot
This
of
is
people,
specific for
Yeah,
dragon guts?
Maybe.
If I were a
For
dragon.
Ahamkara,
If you were a dragon vet,
If I'm an Ahamkara, yes.
I've heard some arguments on the anatomy of Inside Riven, and I just like this. Have you ever been inside an Ahamkara before? Because clearly you have,
Right,
and
right.
it's this little
It's-
chamber
it's-
with a tiny heart inside.
Yep.
You get to
There's-
invent. You get to play God.
Yeah.
The act of raw creation.
Talking about raid day feeling like Christmas is such like it's such an honor to get to watch you guys play this when it's out in the wild. And I think that I feel like we've sort of cheated Christmas in Destiny 2 with now we have like, oh, we'll release multiple raids a year. It's like, oh, so we get to have multiple
Right, I guess
Christmases.
So many
right?
Christmases.
Like, how many days do I get to just sit in the studio like and watch people play video games? Ooh.
Many times as you earn it.
Yeah, one of my favorite things I think about it is like the amount of learning that we can get from it. There's so much that we can watch players do that we can bring to like future experiences, and we're like, oh, okay, so that's how they took that. Like, how would we incorporate that into whatever comes next, or like anything else we want to do around the studio? Because so much of Destiny is like interrelated, right? Like you can take like. These are some of the best players in our game doing worlds first. Like you can take learnings from those guys and apply it anywhere else. You can be like, hey, that's a really fun thing that they landed upon. How will we work that in elsewhere?
It's so wonderful that it is so immediate now too. Because as a longtime Bungie fan, not as long as some or even most, but as a longtime Bungie fan, I remember in order to show the developers what Halo meant to us, we had to painstakingly edit our own videos and even upload them to our own servers and then somehow find some way to get people to watch them. I mean, YouTube and Twitter, these were all things that sort of matured and became relevant on a mass scale while that game matured, you know, and throughout the course of Destiny, you know, like obviously YouTube was instrumental to how we introduced the world to the game, but now with, you know, Twitch, I mean, you know, if you're watching Twitch or if you're streaming on Twitch, you're up in our kitchen. You know, you're on any number of monitors throughout the studio because we can see in real time, you know, to get a visceral, immediate reaction to the things that we've created that you're playing.
I watched Roman get his Thunderlord the other day. Just like getting my coffee.
Easier to get coffee than Thunderlord.
I feel like we're not going to see a loot moment here because so much of our team has already looted. These are hardcore raiders.
Yes.
Oh, we got a few maybe here. We got a few. All right.
nice.
Yeah, we did insist on some training runs here. You know, we have had Bungie streams in the past, guilty as charged, that could have been better rehearsed, could have been better trained for, and were just sort of marathon wipe fests. So mission complete.
Yay!
Wow.
I saw an exotic, but I didn't see a 1,000 voices.
Maybe they have.
I'm at 15 on live. Still waiting.
Well, with the with the Dab Fest back in session, what else would you like to show them? What else would you like to say? Is that it?
Thank you for playing the raid. We hope you had as much fun playing it as we did making it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and Jonto said it
I
better
mean,
than I
yeah,
was going to
he's
say.
good with words.
Yeah, he's a writer. I mean,
He's a writer.
He's gonna craft it just right.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank our developers who joined us for some commentary. Let's take one last look at our triumphant raid team. Thank you so much for playing. And for those of you who tuned in to watch, thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope a little bit of the fun and appreciation that happens between these teams rubbed off. We love to give you a sense of who we are and what's important to us when we're making the things that you experience. And we'll do more of these things. There's plenty of other, not raid-alongs, but ride-alongs. We could do Shattered Coast, we could do Dreaming City, and well, there's all sorts of new content in the annual pass that we'll be talking about next week as well. So plenty more to do in Destiny in the weeks and months to come. Thanks for all the love and chat right now. We really appreciate you watching. I'm Deej. It's been my pleasure to host. This is the end of our stream. Thanks for tuning in.